start to put tension on my string drawback, I was like, okay, I'm gonna smoke.
It's him. You can look at the horns when he's dead. I'm in the zone. Let the arrow go is perfect.
So when they lose their front doors, and, that's how you know they're smoking.
Went about 5, 10 more yards. He probably went 20 yards total. Stepped over, tried to get back up. And I saw him pull up.
We rushed 4 meters rods that night. We got like 156 and something like that. And then the next day we came out to 163 even.
You're listening to the White Cat Outdoors podcast, bringing you to the table where we talk about the outdoors.
What's going on, guys? This is another episode of the White Cat Outdoors podcast. Thanks for hanging around. Me and Nick are in the studio tonight. Tom decided to be a bum and not show up, as he does quite often.
He was actually feeling under the weather, so he had a little bit of an excuse, I guess.
Yeah, that's all it is, just an excuse. Yeah. But we found a replacement for him. We've talked about you before on the podcast a couple times, Clayton. Like I just said your name, Clayton. We did an episode last year after we got back from gator hunting with you, so
Okay.
Guests are somewhat familiar with you, but you can just say, introduce yourself, tell a little bit about yourself, what you do, how you got into the outdoors. So obviously you are an obscene avid outdoorsman, so.
Yeah, my name's Clayton Schlitt. I'm from Vero Beach, Florida, and basically born in the outdoors. I've been hunting and stuff with my dad since I was a kid, and the older I got, the more I got into it. So it just stemmed from there.
I think you said your first a vehicle was actually an airboat, didn't you? Yeah.
Well, I did actually have an airboat before I had a truck, yes. But yeah, my dad would drop me off at the Marsh, and or I would had an older cousin or a couple older friends that had a driver's license, and we would go airboating. Yeah, I definitely had an airboat before matter of fact, I had sunk my first airboat before I had a truck. So it was definitely a learning curve, but we had a lot of fun, and I wouldn't trade my airboat for nothing. Still to this day, I just got done. Since y'all were gator hunting with me, I had a pretty good accident and had a motor mount break and tore things up pretty good. So we had to do a whole new rebuild, and she's pretty much brand new right now.
Nice.
So where did your hunting or love for the outdoors start? I know you said you've pretty much been your whole life, but what species or what kind of hunting were you into?
So we hunted hogs mainly as kids growing up. We had dogs, and we would travel the state. We had buddies and people we'd talk to from one end of the state to the other, and had some friends live in Georgia and Alabama throughout the years. We hog hunted all over the place, but man, we would do it 4 nights a week, freaking sometimes more, sometimes 7, and it was all we did for a long time. And I got a good handful of buddies that are still into it, but I myself don't do it anymore. But I chased them things through swamps for a long time, and then as life got busier, I just didn't have the time, and the dogs were really starting to sit around. So at some point, you're just being cruel to the dogs, and they ain't getting out to go the way they want to go. So you gotta
reevaluate a little bit.
Yeah, I gotta reevaluate.
So what were you doing with the hogs? And
we would sell them mainly. We'd catch them live, and we'd tie them up, throw them in a hog trailer, and then we had several.
Be a process in itself.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, so, I mean, just like everything, 9 times out of 10, it's way off in the woods somewhere, so you tie it up, you drag it out, you get your dog secured, and we used to carry these hog trailers, and we have swamp buggies and all that good stuff, so we can usually get pretty close to them, and we would get anywhere from $50 for any old meat hog to $100, $150, depending on how big of a trophy hog. It had some real nice teeth, so we would we'd sell them to these little fence outfits. They would have maybe, I don't know, several hundred acres fenced in or something. Some of them a little bigger, some of them a little smaller, and they would basically turn them loose in there for a put and take kind of deal, and that's about it. Some places, most of the places we were catching them, we had to take them out. Now, if it was somewhere way back in there where we couldn't it was going to be a real bummer to get it out. Sometimes we would just dispose of it and get out of there, because most of the time they didn't. If you started turning them loose, they'd find somebody else come in there. They don't want them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you kind of gotta, whether you want to or not, you kind of gotta deal with it however the landowner wants.
Yeah.
So you don't lose access to the property.
Yeah, for sure. And we were young, so it sometimes could add up to a lot of money. I mean.
Yeah, that's talking with you. That's just crazy to me, because like we've talked, we were just talking before we hit record about coon hunting and stuff that we do up here, and we were always able to make a couple bucks at it here and there, but nothing crazy. But we don't have anything up around Northwest PA anywhere up here like you do back home with hogs, and you've talked about all the money you could make frog gigging and stuff. Yep. So it's a completely different world for us talking with you about that. Like, it's totally foreign for us to think of actually being able to make a decent chunk of change off of doing shit like that in the outdoors.
Living off the land, but not farming. It's a different style.
For sure. Yeah, I definitely paid a lot of bills over the years doing that kind of stuff when I was younger. I don't do it anymore. I do it more as a hobby now, because I got a pretty good little construction gig going on back home. But there for right out of high school, me and a couple buddies lived not 5 miles away from the marsh, and you could
lived in the swamp.
Yeah, literally lived in the swamp, and you could go out there and you could catch, on a real good night, your best night, you'd catch somewhere between 80, 85 pounds of frogs, and back then we were getting about $6.50 a pound for them. If
to the wholesalers, you were saying,
to the wholesalers, selling them in that bulk, but then if we would sell them to some of the local guys, they would pay a little bit more, about somewhere between 10 or 12. But you couldn't sell them 80 pounds. If you had 80 pounds of frogs, you had to go to the wholesaler and you'd get $6.50 for them.
Now, you said it's not just as simple as catching them too. You got a lot of cleaning to do before you can sell them.
Oh yeah. No, that's for sure. You spend just as much time cleaning them, if not more, than you do catching them, and it's a heck of a process, man. I mean, at that time, I'd go to work all day, and I'd come home, and I'd clean my frogs from the night before, and then I'd go frogging again, and then it was just a repeat process. But
so I do want to kind of touch on it, because I haven't talked to you about it yet, but like, what was your method for frog gigging? Because we do it up here on a much smaller scale, and I did find out that the frogs you guys get down in Florida taste a hell of a lot better than what we got up here.
Pretty much all we're doing is walking the perimeters of ponds and stuff. We're not
once in a while in a canoe or something. But what are you doing frog gigging all night to get 80 pounds of frogs?
So Florida's basically, was underwater until they figured out how to drain it. So it just consists of a bunch of rivers and marshes all down through. I'm on the East Coast right there, and the particular water that I do spend most of my time on is the upper St. Johns River Basin, and it starts there, and that water flows all the way out to Jacksonville. But so there's these big marshes, and I got a frog chute, what I call it. It goes on the front of my airboat there, and it's got a little prong on it, and you got a frog gig, which has got 4 prongs on it. So you drive around with your headlight, and their eyes light up white, and you gig them, and then you just try to get that prong right between those 4 prongs on that frog, and it pulls off, and the frog slides right down that chute in a bag. And
so you got a pretty streamlined operation.
Yeah. It's not something I came up with, but they've been doing it since forever. But yeah, I just followed suit. It's a foolproof plan. It works real good.
You got pretty accurate with your frog gig after 80 pounds of frogs a night.
Yeah. You don't miss many, really. It's
amazing how
you get pretty dialed in there.
But we noticed, with the lights and stuff, the frogs pretty much freeze right up on you. You can.
Yeah, they do. If they, I can always tell if somebody had been in there gigging them frogs before, because if there'd been somebody in there before, they'd be light shy, and as soon as you hit them with the light, the closer you get, sometimes they'd start going down, and a lot of times they just pop right back up right next to where they were. But if nobody's been in there, yeah, absolutely, you just can freaking crawl right up to them if you want.
Is there any season or bag limits or anything like that down there?
Nope.
So up here, it's a short season in the summertime, and I don't believe there's a bag limit.
There is a bag limit on some types of frogs.
Some types. But I guess what species are you gigging down there? What were we eating?
Bullfrogs.
Bullfrogs?
Yep, those are that's what we gig down there, and there's no season, no limit, just
as much as your heart can handle.
yeah, anymore I just like to gig some, bring them up to friends like you guys, and they're a tasty treat.
No doubt.
I don't put myself through the torture of cleaning frog legs for 6-8 hours anymore.
Yeah, I can't imagine, because we've talked like just what little bit of gigging we do it's a pain in the ass just cleaning a few pounds of them. So I can't imagine having 60, 80 pounds of them to do in one night.
Yeah, and that, those were your best nights. Your average good night would be 40, 50 pounds, but every once in a while you would. But
still more
even
than I
40,
care to clean.
Yeah, even at 40, 50 pounds, you're really got
I
some
was
work.
shocked at how good they are. I mean, because like up here, we eat them, they're all right. But them frog legs we ate the other night were, just top tier. They were phenomenal.
Yeah, no, you won't. I mean, the water's good, clean. It's all drainage, like I said, so it's filtered. It's all keeps moving. Nothing stagnant there.
So let's kind of transition into the gators too, because I think that's something that's totally out of our realm. That we never see that up here. And I guess how'd you get it tangled into that? And
well, I got a picture of me sitting on a freaking 11-foot alligator when I was 4 years old with my teddy bear, that my dad killed. So it was pretty much just as soon as I got old enough to go with him, we were there, and it just. And then now he won't go gator hunting. My dad anymore. He don't. He says I ain't catching no stinking alligator. But I still go. I still get the tags, and I like to take people. I took Whitey and Frank, obviously, about that, and so it's a good time. It's fun, man. You get on those big alligators. It can be frustrating at times, but it's not as easy as it looks in the shows, for us, because we can't use hooks and stuff. So we use these dowels, and the baits pull out. Yeah, the bait. We got this little wooden dowel, and it's got to be smaller than 2 inches. And you put a piece of whatever you want to use for bait, and they swallow it. But alligators got the ability to regurgitate something, so as soon as they want to really get rid of it, they can usually spit that thing out. So it can get pretty frustrating, as they've seen. We did it. We had a lot of alligators on that thing, and they pop out. But if you're in some shallow water areas, you can get a harpoon in them. That's the best way. But if you're hunting in some deeper water, that's pretty hard to do too.
So, what's it like aiming with a harpoon and stuff on a gator? Like, are they pretty skittish when you come up on them?
Yeah,
or how does that work?
Absolutely. Yeah, when you're coming up on them, they're working on getting away from you, and that's a little bit harder because you're throwing the harpoon, because you're trying to. So it's actually leaving your hands. When you're gigging a frog, you keep it in your hand the whole time, and you just gig the frog, put it in the chute, But when you're throwing that harpoon at that alligator, it's actually leaving your hand, and it's got a buoy tied to it, and there's a whole rope in there, so all that's got to leave
and you're driving the boat at the same time.
Yeah, so all that's got to leave the boat and drive the boat and hit the alligator while you're going 35 miles an hour. Probably not that fast. It's probably more like 15, 20, but still, it's not an easy task.
And what I guess, I know obviously gators range bunch in size, but what's your target? I guess what are you after? Because you only get a handful of tags, maybe 2 tags or whatever. So what are you trying to kill when you go out there?
Depending on the area, I got some areas that I really like to hunt. So the way it goes when you apply for the tags is you get X amount of options to apply for. I've seen it. They keep changing, and it was, I don't know, I think this year was somewhere between 8 and 12. I don't remember exactly, but you basically put your first choice, second choice, third choice, all the way down the line, and then you go down and you get it in the preference. But anyways, I got a couple, probably my top 3 options. If I get one of those tags, those are good areas, and I won't kill anything smaller than 10 foot, But
that just sounds huge.
Yeah, and it's not hard to do in those areas. But then you get lower on the list, then I try anything over 8 foot really starts looking like a nice alligator in my opinion. So if I can get an 8 footer, that's ideal. But honestly, the 6-7 footers, they eat the best. But
Gotcha.
if you're just looking to eat one, I'll try to kill a smaller one. But I don't usually, like I said, I don't usually kill them myself anymore. I'll bring somebody. Once I find out I have tags, I'll invite somebody, that doesn't get the chance to do it all the time, and because they really enjoy it. And just like you said, you don't have access to that stuff up here.
Yeah.
I've killed so many of those things, it's crazy. So I try to take somebody that doesn't get to do it very often or ever.
It's kind of funny when you think about it. Like with us never doing it, we hear about you doing it, and it's like, why would you not be out there doing it all the time? But it's like us with certain things up here, we do it all the time. We're used to it. It's not like that off the wall for us to do it. So we're like, it's whatever. So if we get someone that, like, same thing, friends from out of town that want to do it, we're like, hell yeah, we'll take you, do it all day long. But it's not something that we go do all the time for ourselves because we're just so used to it. And it's the same thing with alligators. You grew up in it, and like you said, when you were 4 years old, you were sitting on the back of an alligator. So
what is there anything else to eat on the gator besides the tail? I know you prepped up some phenomenal gator tail the other night, but with 11 foot, I mean, I don't know how percentage wise how much that is tail, but is there any other meat on a gator that's edible?
Yeah, the whole thing's edible. I mean, it's just like any other animal that you kill. It's the same meat that is in the tail, runs through the whole animal, but there's just not a lot of it. Like, so when we skin them, we skin the legs out, and all the meat around their legs is good. It's just a little darker. It's dark meat usually, and then the jaws are real white meat. That's a piece you really want to make sure you get. That's a real good piece right around the jaws, and then basically, there's depending on the size of the alligator, they got tenderloins right down their spine, but they're usually, even on a big alligator, they're usually pretty small. But if you got the whole thing skint, they're worth grabbing. It's definitely a few pieces in there, or back straps rather, not tenderloins. But it's basically just like your average animal. I mean, front legs, back legs, neck, ribs, back straps.
I guess I'm terrible with like the anatomy of like reptiles and stuff. Like I didn't even. Not sure like how much rib meat you would get off of.
Not much. I don't ever take it because I don't gut it or nothing. I usually just cut the tail off, cut the legs off, and then cut the cheeks off.
Now, how hard is it skinning an animal with that tough of a layer of skin on it? Because I mean, I just can't imagine it's a simple process, or at least you dull some knives pretty quick.
Well, your initial cut into it, your out to your legs, like your initial cut through the hide, it's pretty tough, but once you get through there, it's just like skinning anything else. It's just meat. You're just separating the hide from the meat, and it's stuck pretty good. You can't peel it. You got to cut it all. But but it's just you just sit there and running in there, and once you get through that initial cut, then you usually I like to use like a 6-inch or an 8-inch bone-in knife, and then I usually keep a steel, and I just hit it with that every once in a while. But I do that with everything. I like a sharp knife. I did a lot of meat cutting for a lot of years, so I got used to using a real nice sharp knife. So I carry everywhere I go. I carry a knife set, and it's got several different knives that I've had for probably 10 years. I can't tell you the stuff those things have skinned. All the way down to fish to freaking big old animals.
That was the next thing I was interested in, was your diving with groupers and stuff. I know that you brought some grouper up. I know you said you didn't catch them ones, but you indicated you have some experience diving for grouper, which to me that was probably one of the most insane things you were doing, because like I've seen grouper up close, and some of them are huge, and I didn't. The
Goliaths, you're not allowed to harvest those. They actually did just open up a season this year in Florida for the first time, and it's a draw. You get don't quote me to this, but I think they're giving away 100 tags maybe. But I honestly don't know that that's a correct answer. But they gave 100 tags this year, somewhere around there, to a lottery, and then I haven't heard how the results have been, but we're getting quite overran with them. But they won't let us, even if you get the tag. I think the maximum's like 40 inches or something, or 36 inches maybe.
Oh, and they don't want you taking the big ones.
They don't want you to take the big breeders, which is really what you should be taking, because they're overran. I mean, I'm telling you, you'll come across reefs where there'll be Goliath grouper on there, and they'll wipe the entire reef out. It's pretty bad.
So which groupers, like what species of grouper are you diving for?
So we always we would get black grouper and gag grouper mainly. Where we're at on the East Coast was mainly gag grouper, and then we'd get a couple blacks in there, and then a couple snowies and stuff. But I'm not. My buddies are better at the grouper diving than I am. I will say that. I've done my fair share of diving with them, but I got a couple buddies. They're pretty good at it. One of them does it for a living, and that's the one that gave me that fish up here. But
how big are them groupers that you're catching? Because I mean, them fillets were like they were like ribeyes.
Yeah, that was
huge.
Yeah, that was probably maybe a 30-pound fish, 25, 30-pound fish right in there. But
and how many fish did you have there?
That was one fish.
That was one fish, and you fed
6 people.
6 people, and we had extra.
Yeah, and then I sent 4 pieces home with Tim and Mike there.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, no, it's a great. They're pretty meaty fish, and they got to be 24 inches to kill. So I mean, if you kill one, it's going to be a pretty nice. At that point, they're usually 10, 15 pounds, pushing sometimes bigger.
Mm-hmm.
And,
How deep are you're in pretty shallow water, like around reefs and stuff, or are you diving?
When I used to dive, we would dive right in between 90 and 120 right in there.
Oh, really?
Yeah, but
it's way deeper than I was expecting.
Yeah, but where that fish came from my buddy, he's a commercial diver, and they dive quite a bit deeper than that, all the way up to 250.
Wow.
So, do you have to have special certifications or training to be diving that deep?
There's, honestly, I've never got into that deeper diving. Just your
90
average
feels pretty deep to me.
Well, yeah, but that's kind of like your recreational limits, like right there at 100 feet, 110 feet. That's like your recreational limit, and to do that, you just have to go get dive certified, and they basically run you over the basics of do's and don'ts and what can happen, what to look out for, down there. There's a few things you got to watch out for, but for the most part, it's pretty simple, and once you get into that deep diving stuff, then they start mixing gases and stuff, and that's above my knowledge. I don't know about all that, but
so what's the equipment you're using and process once you find a grouper that you're after, I guess, that you want to kill?
So a spear gun, we have spear guns, and then it's got a power head on the end, which is shoots a little bullet, and basically like the bang stick we use for the alligator, the same exact power head I screwed on the end of that pole. I'll screw it on the end of my spear gun, and we got a BCE, that's the vest that goes around you, and then you got your dive tank and your regulator is the hose that goes to your mouth from your dive tank. So you got that stuff, obviously, and then your fins and your mask and stuff like that. And then usually if we're out there, it's lobster season, and we're out there more so to catch lobster, and a grouper's a good bycatch. It's like they're definitely there, but about, I'd say, once every 4 trips, we get a nice grouper out there when we're out there lobster diving, But,
I guess I didn't realize that's the main thing you were out there was for lobster. I don't know if we touched on that.
No, we didn't touch on that just because I didn't have any, and I haven't even been. I went diving opening weekend this year, and I never got back out. So it's been. I haven't done hardly any diving. I think I did 1 dive all year this year. So it's been. We've kind of got out of it for the time being, and then. Ever since I started going up there to Alaska, that kind of changed the way I do things, because I got to take a lot of time to do that. So I gotta give up a lot of time and other things that I used to do. So
yeah.
What's the effective range on the spear gun?
I'd say it's just like everything else. There's different levels, and the more money you spend, you can get some really nice guns that can shoot far. And I'm not sure. I mean, you get custom built guns that can really do some really nice shooting, and I'm not going to get into all that because I've never had one, but just your average spear gun you go pick up at the store, I'd say you'd want to keep it somewhere between 10 feet, 15 feet would probably
So you gotta
be
get
like,
pretty damn close.
yeah, you got to get pretty close. Like 15 feet would probably be as far as you want to, probably not even, so it's got a line on it, and there's usually only about maybe 10 feet, somewhere between 10 or 12 feet cord between your gun and your pole spear. So I'd say somewhere right around there, 10, 12 feet is about the most you're going to get out of your average spear gun.
Where are you? I mean, how accurate are you with it? Like, are you aiming for a certain point on that fish, or are you just aiming for the fish?
Well, yeah, you obviously want to hit them in the head because you don't waste any meat that way, and it kills them quickest. And yeah, you can be pretty accurate if you got time to really line up your shot. Yeah, it's pretty. You look down just like the rifle of a barrel, you know. And, and you can get it pretty accurate because you're like I said, you're not far away. And a lot of times, especially when the water's colder, you know, you can. I mean, you get that thing within this far of them. You just kind of stick it out.
Oh, really? You can get right up to them.
Yeah, and you just stick it out straight in front of you, and you just start swimming real slow. And then as soon as he starts acting like he's gonna move off or get spooked, you shoot him. You know, and sometimes they'll let you get
damn near touch
the
them.
gun, yeah, damn near touch them. Yeah.
Huh.
So, what happened, or I guess, how did you get interested and then involved into Alaska? I mean, because you're talking.
Yeah, I don't think we said that's how we met was through going up to Alaska.
Yeah, so I mean, you're talking as far away as possible to stay from Florida to Alaska. Like, I mean, there's so other places you could have guided or dove into, but what was the draw to Alaska, and how did you get involved in it?
So when I was younger, I'm gonna say about 12 years old, I went to Alaska with my dad hunting for the first time, and we went up in the Brooks Range, and we were caribou hunting, and the guy that we were hunting with, he was an outfitter, and he lived in Florida, where I'm from, just 30 minutes up the road. And I met him one day because I caught a big largemouth bass, and I wanted to get it mounted, and my local taxidermist there in town that I used didn't do bass and or fish at all. So I looked this guy up, and I go up there, and we're sitting there talking to him, and he's got all these Alaskan trophies, and my dad's talking to him. He's like, yeah, I guide up there, or I have an outfitting business. And so my dad ended up striking a deal up with him to go up there, and I went up there, and I started hunting with him, and me and him got to be buddies, so I'd kind of hang out a little longer and help him with some of the camp supplies and camp duties and stuff. And so we ended up going up there 3 times in a row, 3 years in a row. So...
You hunting every time, or were you helping in camp? Or what?
Both. I would hunt, and then I would stay after my dad would leave, and I'd help out in camp for a couple weeks and stuff. So then after that, he kept telling me, he's like, man, you need to come up here. He said, you got your time. He said you need to come up here and guide. And I was in high school at the time, so it just wasn't. It wasn't
timing wasn't.
Yeah,
right.
Timing wasn't right. So we're fast forwarding. 10 years, 15 years down the road, and I want to go kill a moose. So I'm like, man. And I trying to figure out how I can do it, and I come across this drop camp moose hunt. So I go out there and get dropped off in the middle of nowhere, me and my dad, and I start calling. And then, you know, up to this point, I'd watched thousands of hours of freaking moose hunting videos, you know, and just trying to teach myself. And you know, so I'm out there in the woods making these sounds, hoping I'm doing this right. And I did it for 6 days. On the 6th day, man, I'm telling you, it was like he read it from the script, man, like watching a TV show. He started grunting and fired up, came in on a string, and man, it was the coolest thing I ever seen. So then I ended up looking into.
You did get that moose?
I got that moose. I harvested that moose. It was a 55-inch bull, and
stud.
So then I had already looked into my Alaska guide license, and that was my last requirement. I had to kill a big game animal. So I had my time, and now I had my animal. So now all I needed was a letter of recommendation. So I'm like, well, how in the heck am I going to get that? So I just Googled Alaska guide jobs, and Mike Vanstrom, Alaska Lead Outfitters, pops up. I called him, and he said, yeah. He said, let's. I gave him a couple references. He called, checked it out, and he said, yeah, we'll give it a go. Let's.
But you
get
said
on
your
up here."
references had nothing to do with hunting, though, right?
Yeah, nothing. Well, I had a meat cutting reference, and I had gave him the reference to that guide I worked for up there in Alaska the 3 years.
Okay.
But so I would have worked for that guy, but by the time I got ready to go up there, that guy had retired and shut his business down. So
Yeah.
and he's an older gentleman. I still talk to him, still good friends. Every year before I go to Alaska, I call him up and tell him when I'm going. And but so I found Mike, and it's been great ever since. And now I'm hooked. I love it up there.
So you're this was just finished your second season with Mike, right?
Yes, this was my second season.
And I guess when you were hunting with your buddy from down in Florida, how close of were you close to where Mike's at now, or?
No, totally different parts of the state. So I was up in the Brooks Range with my buddy from down there, which is pretty far north. It's just about as north as you can go, and we're on the Nushagak now, which is just about as. It's not as far south as you can go, but it's as far south as we can go. I think the units below us are resident only.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So are you, did you deal with a lot of the natives and stuff when you were in your northern regions, or was that a new experience, or?
Yeah, that was definitely a new experience. We dealt with them. So we flew into a town called Kotzebue, and we dealt with them there. But once we left there, we flew. It was a little different. We weren't hunting on a river. We were hunting. He had a landing strip way out there, so that we
wasn't nearly as accessible.
Yeah, it wasn't nearly as accessible. So you didn't see hardly seen other people. There would be some guys every once in a while use their landing strip to drop off some do-it-yourself hunters, and but usually that worked out. We would go communicate with them and then kind of come up with a game plan, and it worked out.
How different was the style of hunting then from way up there with landing in with on a landing strip versus hunting these rivers? How was that a huge difference for you to change up the way you're doing it?
Absolutely. So when I hunted up there with him, we didn't really do a lot of moose hunts. He had moose. He had great bulls up there. He didn't like packing them out. He didn't. They're just a lot of work at the time, and that was a long time ago. And you didn't make near the money you do. They didn't get near the money then than they do now. So
yeah,
you were basically doing way more work for more or less the same paycheck. And we had caribou out the freaking yang up there, so that was our main gig. We shot caribou just left and right all day long, every day.
So what was there when you went for Mike? Was there a draw for you to want to get into moose or brown bear, or you just wanted to guide in Alaska? I didn't know if there was a certain species you wanted to be guiding, or
moose. Yeah, I went for the moose 100%. The brown bear is just kind of something that goes along with it, and it helps make my time, is worthwhile while I'm up there, and getting into it. I enjoy brown bear hunting. Depending on the style you do it, some of it can get a little monotonous, but you get a good stock on a bear, and it works out. It's hard to beat.
Yeah, we had Tim and Mike told their story with some of their bear hunts, and they said it was a absolute ball.
Yeah.
But that was up in the hills versus on the riverbanks, which I guess is what you had said. The riverbank hunting can get a little
it can get a little
dry.
boring in my opinion. The hills is in my opinion way funner hunt.
Yeah.
You're not going to kill. The biggest bears we kill are in the river bottom, and the biggest bears, I've only been doing it for 2 years, but I've been fortunate to kill 2 9-foot bears, and they've been both in the river bottom. And every bear I've seen in my 2 years out of the hills, stays right around that 8-foot mark. So you definitely, if you got a good food source in that bottom, you got a good chance at a nice big bear. But it can get boring. You may sit there for 8-9 days and not see anything, but then when you see him, a lot of times he might be a nice one.
Good deal. Is there any other interest or anything like that you do for the outdoors, or moving forward, or are you just happy with Alaska right now?
I'm happy with Alaska right now, and I obviously do my whitetail hunting back home. As soon as I get home, I do I hit the woods, pretty once a week, I'd say, which isn't as much as I'd like to, but I definitely get out and do my whitetail hunting, and then I like the turkey hunting and the duck hunting. I mean, really, I just like hunting. If it's
Anything
in
to get
season,
outside.
yeah, I just like getting outdoors and going hunting, man. I don't really have a favorite species, everything. To my opinion, I get tired of hunting one thing all the time, I like switching it up. That's why I do hunt everything, because I get bored of hunting the same thing every time. I like to, one day I might go duck hunting, one day I might go deer hunting.
That's how we are. Whatever is in season, doesn't matter what time of year it is. If there's something to go out and chase, we're all about doing different new stuff. So
Yeah.
I was shocked at the size of whitetails that you've killed down in Florida. Florida isn't something you think of for like big whitetails, but you've killed some really impressive deer. And is that still in the marsh, or?
Yeah, a lot of them are in the marsh. Some of them are, and then I've hunted. My dad's got a big piece of private ground that he leases down there that I've told y'all about, and we've killed a few out there. And then I've been invited with some buddies on some of their places and gotten one or two from there.
Your land's basically all either like a cow pasture or marsh. You don't have like any sort of agriculture or anything down there.
It's all cypress heads and cow pasture. The people we lease from is the Mormons Cattle Company, and they're the largest cow calf ranch in the world, operation in the world. So so they got all their ground for designated built for cows.
One of the crazy things you had told us I didn't realize was even a thing. Having more than 5,000 acres and a biologist, you said that you guys can write your own game laws on that piece of property. Now, that's totally foreign to us up here. 'Cause, I mean, we're obviously heavily regulated by the DNR. We also don't really have tracts of land that big up here that one person owns.
Yeah, Clayton and I were talking about that today when I was taking him out hunting. Like, someone with 600 acres, that's a giant piece of property around here for one person to own. Like, usually it's 100 acres or less, and the 100-acre chunks are even, there's not a lot of those either.
Yeah, you hear somebody that's got a 100-acre piece up here, people are like, oh, man, you got a lot of land.
Right.
There's not,
for sure.
As far as I know, I mean, there may be some spots in the state, but as far as I know, there's nobody with 5 to 10,000 acre chunks that are all just connected. Like, 'cause you said
other than public land,
yeah,
of
other
course,
than public, but I'm
privately
saying
owned.
He's got 7,000 acres they hunt that's all connected. And I think it's pretty wild that you have a full-time biologist, correct?
There's a couple of them, yeah. On the Mormons Cattle Company owns 352,000 acres right there in that particular spot, and we lease 7,000 of it from them with 12 other guys, and I believe there's somewhere around 50 leases total on the whole 350,000 acres.
Wow.
So is there like a biologist per 5,000 acres or something, or how does that work?
I don't know the answer to that. It's not that many, but there may be two, or I think for the whole thing or something like that. I honestly don't know.
I just thought it was really interesting that they are able to write your own game laws. You said your bag limits aren't.
Yeah, the bag limits stay. You got to follow all the bag limits and stuff like that. But yeah, they can decide whether you can shoot a rifle starting opening day of bow season.
Yeah, or even, I don't know, is night hunting at all? Is that legal down in Florida? Or?
So they get some of the citrus growers, and what farms we do have down there, citrus growers, and now they're getting big into vegetable farms down there and stuff like that. They can get deprivation tags where they can go out.
Okay.
They're more or less nuisance tags, and they can kill them 24/7. Lights, doesn't matter. Thermal, they can do whatever.
That's
but
wild.
It's pretty uncommon for you to see that anymore.
Okay.
They used to be a little bit more popular, but now it seems like they, because people really would take advantage of it, and really put a hurting on some deer.
So it's mostly seasons and weapons that you can use is what they're adjusting for you guys?
Yeah, so they can't change. Like, the season still starts on the same day as everybody else and ends on the same day as everybody else. It's just the weapons we use, I guess, is
the big thing.
What they can dictate.
So we start hunting opening day. What everybody else has to shoot a bow, Anybody on that particular lease, on any of the 350,000 acres, can shoot a rifle if they wanted to. They have the ability to make that okay.
Okay. And then what, like up here, we get one buck one doe, maybe 2 does if you're lucky, without special permits and stuff. What kind of bag limits do you guys have down in Florida on that?
So we
acreage?
get 5. Well, the state law is $5 per person per year, and you can kill no more than 2 in one day.
Okay.
On that particular piece of property, my dad gets 3 buck tags, and you got to get, so your first, it's a quality deer management. So your first, they got to be 5.5 years old. So if you shoot a deer and it meets 5.5 years old and all the requirements and it's all good, you get your next tag. If you shoot a young buck, they don't give you any more tags, and you can get up to 3 per member.
Okay.
So we're on our 3rd one. We've shot 2 bucks this year, and they've both been 5.5 years old. So we got our 3rd tag, and we haven't quite found one we want to kill yet. So I think we might just shut it down. And we got some young bucks that the biologist aged at 3.5 and 4.5, so we don't want to shoot those. So we don't have a good mature buck right this minute.
So what I know, the size of deer is obviously different and stuff, but what are the biologists? I mean, if you've talked to them, what are they looking at to age them and like tell you, like if a biologist tells you that we believe that that's a 5.5-year-old deer, are you still held responsible if it comes in and it's say 4.5 or 3.5?
No, if the biologist tells you it's 5.5, that's on them.
So
that's why we have this app that's designed where we turn the pictures in. Like if we get pictures of these deer, we turn them in on this app, and the biologist looks through the app. Every lease on the whole 350,000 acres turns their pictures into this app, and the biologist will age those deer and they'll tell you how old they are. And
so what he says is, it's not like they pull a tooth afterwards.
They do.
Yeah,
they confirm it. But
if they tell you it's 5.5, you're
good.
You're getting another tag.
Yeah, you're good. Because
that's
interesting. And that's what it's there for. It's so you can go out to the woods and not have to worry about. So after the first couple weeks of season, you pretty much got pictures of the majority of the deer that are in your area. So you pretty much. You don't have to worry about it at that point. If you see a deer, you can shoot it knowing that it's 5.5, and you don't have to worry about it. And if for some reason it doesn't, then the biologist, it was wrong on their part. They told you to shoot it. So
I'm sure they're pretty accurate with it. I mean, that's what they do for a living. They look at thousands of pictures.
They're either pretty accurate or they never admit they're wrong because it never goes the other way.
So are they the ones that are like obtaining those pictures, or you're like, and
me
then you just turn them all in?
All the lease members, we turn them in on this.
So they're not responsible for getting all that information.
No.
They just receive it from.
They just go through and look at them and age all your deer. That way you can comfortably go shoot them without having to worry about losing your other tags.
That's wild. I didn't even know that was a thing at all. Like, that's totally not even on our radar up here. That's because I mean we have an antler restriction up here now that they implemented probably 20 years ago now, but it's nothing in depth like that. Yeah. And we never have any sort of contact with biologists or anything like that unless you kill a deer and just happen to want to get it aged. You can send a tooth in, but it costs money or whatever. So,
well, I think the difference too, Frank, is they've got 7,000 acres. You can usually get a pretty good idea of what deer are on 7,000 acres. Around here, a lot of pieces we hunt are 20 acres, 40 acres, 60 acres. And
deer are coming and going through there.
You've got so many deer that we kill in November that you haven't seen all year. So
they showed up from 2 miles away, and
well, I mean, Frankie's actually one of the big deer he's after. One piece where he's got access to hunt, and where he lives are a couple miles apart, and that buck's on both pieces. So it's tough with small tracts of land to really get an idea of everything that's
for sure.
You could get a new buck on there at any time that you've never seen or had no pictures of.
Yeah, and that's
sure
what I like hunting about up here is because you do get that. Like it happens down there. We'll get a new deer shows up every once in a while, but for the most part, you watch.
You
the
know
same
what
bucks,
you're getting.
Yeah, so you might you may not see them for a couple weeks, but
they're around.
I'm trying to figure how I want to word this here. I'm totally having a hard time figuring out how I want to ask this question. But I get with those bucks that you're targeting 5.5 years old and stuff. How quickly can a biologist age them for you? Like, say you do get a new buck that shows up on the piece. How quickly can you report that deer back to the biologist and him let you know that it, yes, it is 5.5 or it's not?
So usually, like I go out on the weekends because I work during the week. Obviously, I'll go out on the weekend. I'll check my cameras and I'll get my picture. And nowadays, most of it's on a cell camera, so you don't even have to go out to check your cameras. And so once the picture shows up, I'll turn it in, and I'd say anywhere from 2 to 5 days, just depending. I'm not sure exactly. They probably do it on certain days of the week. I don't know those days, but depending on how close you are to that day, they'll. But never more than about 4 or 5 days. But also, we have a rule that if it's a new buck that hasn't been turned in, and it just shows up, and you're not sure about the age, if it's 16 inches wide or has a 20-inch main beam, you're allowed to shoot it at that point too.
And you won't, and it won't hurt you if it's under 5.5.
Okay.
Now, if you shoot a deer they aged at 4.5 that's 16 inches wide and has a 20-inch main beam, you still lose your tag.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense, though, because you got to have something, you get some crazy monarch that shows up there.
Exactly.
You don't want to have to be like, I don't know, the biologist didn't say I could shoot it.
Right, yeah.
So it's good that there is some sort of judgment that they allow if there's a deer that's new.
Right.
And I'm sure it happens. I mean.
Oh, yeah. No, my sister killed one, I think, 2 or 3 weeks ago. She killed a really nice one, 125-inch 9-point. They showed up. We never had any pictures of this deer, and it showed up, and we could check the cameras one weekend, got the picture of it, turned the picture in, or her and my brother-in-law did, and they aged it by that weekend. Luckily, it was old enough and all that stuff. They aged it at 5.5, so they went out there and killed it the very next weekend.
That's impressive. So do you guys do a lot of targeting certain deer? I mean, when you age them all,
100%, yeah.
Like up here, a lot of it. I mean, you have a few deer that you're after and stuff, but a lot of deer up here, it seems like it is a little bit by chance. Obviously you're in the right spots, but it happens pretty regularly that people shoot deer that they haven't seen or were real familiar with. But it sounds like with that size of property and all of the work you guys are doing with biologists, you're probably targeting, you probably have a hit list of deer that, these are what we're allowed to kill here, so that's what we're going to target.
Oh, yeah. On that app, you have what's called the hit list. You got your approved deer that have been turned in on that property. And we're allowed to feed down there, and we're allowed to hunt over feeders down there, so that helps tremendously because even if it's at night, those bucks will eventually they'll show up on those feeders. So every one of them will eventually show up on that feeder. It may only be once, but that you will get a picture of them. So you don't have to find every good trail through the woods. If you put your camera on that feeder, then you will eventually get pictures of every buck that's living in that area for the most part.
It's not like you guys have big tracts of cornfields and bean fields. So when you put feed out like that, it's you're putting a main food source down for them.
Definitely. Well, we also plant food plots. We plant 12 food plots on that piece of property. So ranging anywhere from an acre to 2 acres.
So what are you using for feed, and what kind of food plots are you putting in Florida?
So we plant astronomy down there mainly.
I have no idea what that is.
Yeah, I've never heard of that.
I don't know how. It's just a little weed. Kind of looks like a fern in a way. But just it only grows about that tall, and they love it. And it grows good down there. There's not a lot of stuff that'll grow real good down there, so you got to be careful for that. So we feed that astronomy, and then in the feeders we just feed corn. Usually got one on a timer with a spinner that we put corn in, and then when the deer are coming up in velvet, but basically. We let our feeders go out for turkey season because you're not allowed to hunt around feeders for turkey season. So we let them go out so we can hunt some of those areas there. And but So right after turkey season, we'll start feeding them protein out of a gravity feeder too, right next to the corn feeder, and then we'll feed them protein all the way until they start shedding out, and then once they rub out, then we'll usually back down off that and just feed them corn.
So you can have protein out while you're turkey hunting, but not corn.
No.
Oh, you can't have. You can't
No,
have
I
protein
don't. We empty them when hunting season goes out. We'll probably feed them for about another month or 2 months, and then we'll empty the feeders out for 30 days. All the corn's got to be gone for 30 days, and then we'll start turkey hunting for those 6-8 weeks, and then as soon as last weekend of turkey season, we'll fill them all back up and put our protein in, and then we'll just go on our cycle after that.
Gotcha. And then you said you cut out the protein once their horns are done growing and they're all rubbed out.
Yeah, which is I'm not saying it's a great thing to do, because you still want to. If you can do it, it's good to feed your deer protein. It gets expensive for us, so
I can't imagine.
So we
7,000
started,
acres.
we started. But you got 12 people on there, so
you split it up pretty good.
So usually everybody's got 1 or 2 feed sites, so you get 20 to 30 feeders out there, which is real good for keeping your deer on your property.
Yeah.
Because other than that, there comes times of years where there's not a whole lot of food in those woods out there because they stay pretty wet.
Mm-hmm.
And then what dry land we have, they keep pretty wide open for the cows.
Gotcha. Well, Clayton, I really appreciate you joining us on the podcast before you head back down to Florida, and it was fun hunting with you the last few days and getting to meet you.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, we had a ball. I was glad to do it. That was a first for me. Doing the whole flintlock thing, so that was cool to see.
It's an experience for sure.
Yeah, that was cool.
Definitely a change of pace. You described it very well. It's not the most efficient way to do things, but
it was
it's
exactly
a good time.
Definitely.
Well, thanks again, and hope we run into you again. I know Frank and Uncle Frank definitely will up in Alaska, and I've been talking to Frank about trying to get up there, but
yeah, we'll have to come down and try to catch some pythons or something sometime.
Yeah,
some
absolutely.
hogs or something.
You're always welcome.
But thanks again. We'll cut it off here. Thanks everybody for listening, and make sure you guys are always doing something to get outside.